Hello everybody, hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at Tropical Depression Cristobal. Yesterday this was a tropical storm, but it has weakened into a tropical depression because it has made landfall with southern Mexico and into Guatemala, and now it's going to be making its way further to the north, kind of looping back around into the Gulf of Mexico again, and it's going to be most likely, almost 100% of these models bring it strengthening back to a tropical storm, Cristobal. So we'll be looking at all that in today's video, as well as your National Hurricane Center and your model guidance for this storm, as well as some of your satellite imagery. So here's what the National Weather Service is currently showing: some heat-related advisories in the southwestern United States. You have anywhere from 95 to about 110 degree temperatures for your high temperatures. So very, very warm over the southwest. Red flag warnings for parts of Utah and Colorado, and then we have some flood watches for parts of southern Florida, southern Mississippi, and southern Louisiana there. And then we even have some tropical storm warnings starting to pop up on the map over the waters south of Louisiana here. So here is your current National Hurricane Center page. They have Tropical Storm Cristobal, or Tropical Depression Cristobal there, over southern Mexico and northern Guatemala there. So we'll take a zoomed in look. This is where they officially placed the low pressure just north of the Guatemala border there. Now here's your visible infrared satellite, and this is showing you how cold your cloud tops are, and the colder they are, the more intense your storm is. And you see it's really been weakening. You've had some decently cold cloud tops earlier in the day, but they've really weakened as it's continued to stay on land, and they're going to continue to weaken until it starts to move back and curve into the Gulf of Mexico here, but still very, very scattered and not very defined. It was very defined until really hitting Mexico, and then that's when it really starting to go downhill for Tropical Depression Cristobal. And once it starts to move northward into the Gulf of Mexico, like it is expected to do, it'll re-intensify, most likely into a tropical storm. Here's your current satellite imagery, and you see very, very scattered cloudiness and really no defined rotation, but you do see a little area of low pressure. You can see some rotation within there, and that's how they most likely define that area of rotation there. So here is your key messages. You can pause the screen here if you want to read them out, but basically they're just kind of going over their forecast and what they think is really going to happen. Some things to note out: they're thinking that there is going to be quite a bit of rainfall, and I would agree with that, over parts of southern Mexico and northern Guatemala. I would also say that you'll probably have about 2 to 4 inches of rainfall throughout Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, and Mississippi, as well as maybe Alabama if this curves a little bit further to the east. But also for parts of Florida and Georgia, be careful, because you will also have quite a bit of rainfall out of this, because this system will be quite broad and very wide, so it will be able to affect a large area, and it won't be too organized, so that'll also help it affect more of a wide area with a big swath of rainfall. We have this is the National Hurricane Center's cone of uncertainty, and then I'll also be showing you my personal cone of uncertainty at the end of the video. We have a tropical depression until it starts to get over the Gulf of Mexico waters, where it immediately strengthens to a tropical storm there all the way until Louisiana, and then by about 7 a.m. Tuesday Central Time, it'll move into Arkansas, and it'll probably go down to a tropical depression at some point there. Now here is the model guidance from these models, and they're showing most of them bringing it to Louisiana and keeping it within about Louisiana's borders there, all the way north into Arkansas, and then some of the longer range models bring it into Missouri, and then further north into the Midwest there. So here is the GEFS tracks, your GFS ensemble model tracks, and you see we have over Louisiana and Mississippi, we have most of the models bringing it somewhere within that region, and then your Canadian model ensembles, most of them bring it anywhere between Louisiana and Mississippi, but these are a little bit less accurate, and I would personally, you'll see in my cone of uncertainty at the end of the video with my official forecast that I have over Louisiana and Mississippi, really with my cone of uncertainty. Here's how strong it is is going to be. Most of them bring it between 40 and 60 knots there, so that's about between 45 miles per hour and about 70 miles per hour there. So it is a wide range, and some of these models bring it weaker than others. Of course, some of the higher end models bring it to just about a Category 1 hurricane there. So that would be interesting to see this early in the season. Might even break some records there. Now, here's your wind history with the storm, and you see we have tropical storm force winds recorded anywhere in that yellow region, so that includes some areas offshore of Mexico and then also inland of Mexico. And then you've probably experienced tropical depression wind speeds over a greater swath, probably within this region right here, if I'm just making an estimate from what I've seen recently. So here's your chances of tropical storm force wind speeds, and you see anywhere basically south of Louisiana is where you have that swath of about 20 to about 40% chance of seeing those tropical storm force wind speeds, and I think this is a bit low. Personally, I would put it more around 60 to 70% chance, just because almost 100% of the models are showing this strengthening to a tropical storm. This is pretty typical of the National Hurricane Center, because I understand that they really don't want to make too many bold predictions, because of course if they get it wrong then they can have some backlash with that. But personally, I have no problem with putting out probably a tropical storm. This is probably going to strengthen to a tropical storm as it moves just north of Mexico into the Gulf of Mexico waters, and it's almost certain by this point, which I'll show some of the model guidance from the European model in just a little bit, and they're almost 100% of them showing a tropical storm. Here is your chances of 58 mile per hour wind speeds, and most of those are just south of Louisiana, even touching Louisiana there. So that would be very interesting, but it is a very low chance, 5 to 10% chance of that. And I agree, more of this, I would bump it maybe to 20 to 30% chance, but still the chances of that are quite low. 58 miles per hour would definitely be some very, very strong winds. Here's your arrival time of those wind speeds, and you see anywhere from about Sunday 8 a.m. to about Monday 8 a.m. is when it's going to be making its most significant impacts, and this is again Central Time here. So anywhere between Sunday morning and Monday morning really is going to be where you're going to feel the greatest impacts out of this storm, and you can also tell how close these lines are together within the time period between Sunday 8 p.m. and Sunday 8 a.m. It doesn't move too much. This is about a 12-hour period, and it moves very, very little. So it's just goes to show you the pattern that we're in, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. That's going to really be suppressing this further to the south, and that's going to help it kind of stall out over the Gulf of Mexico, and that's why it's been moving so very slowly, and I'll talk about that again later on in the video. Here are some of your ingredients for tropical storm development, and this is the most recent sea surface temperature anomalies, and this is from NCEP and their data, and they've updated this yesterday, so it is fairly recent here. And you see anywhere where tropical depression Cristobal was and tracked from, you see some average to about below average temperatures, and before this they were well above average. So it shows that Cristobal really used up all of that heat that was stored up, and that really helped it grow to about a tropical storm. Then of course made landfall into Mexico, and then it's going to move further northward into these very, very warm waters right off the shore of Mexico there. And then as it continues its track northward, it's still within above average to about average sea surface temperatures until it hits about Louisiana and the waters just off Louisiana, where it's slightly below average, but still that shouldn't hinder development quite too much. Now, here is your current sea surface temperatures in terms of the actual temperatures. Here is they're in Celsius right now, so I'll kind of convert them quickly for you. Anywhere in those yellows, oranges, and reds, that's where you're above 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 26 degrees Celsius, which is generally the benchmark for seeing hurricane or tropical storm force development. And you see all of the Gulf of Mexico between 26.5 degrees Celsius or higher, and many of these areas between 27.5 to about 29 degrees Celsius. You would like to see these water temperatures, pretty much all of them, in the 28-degree range if you really want to see some sort of major storm development. But of course, we're still in June, and as we continue to go throughout the season, we'll see even warmer and warmer sea surface temperatures. But you see the area that it's going to be tracking through, which is basically this would be the cone of uncertainty almost. You see it's pretty much all above 26 degrees Fahrenheit or 26 degrees Celsius, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. which definitely is very good for tropical storm force development. Now, here's your heat content in the ocean, and you see over the area that it's going to be tracking through, which is this area as it starts to move further to the north. You see we have a lot of heat content stored up, and that's really going to help fuel this system. Also, if we were to get a system throughout the Caribbean, it would really be very, very favorable because we have a very, very large quantity of heat content just being stored up there. So that would really be interesting to see if we see some sort of system develop in the Caribbean. And if we do, I'll definitely be sure to let you guys know. Now, something I want to show you is your GFS model and the upper air that it's showing. Now, this is a couple thousand feet above our heads, and this is showing you where your high and low pressures are. Now, high pressures would be anywhere in these oranges. That's where your high pressures would be, and your low pressures would be to anyone in this blue area, and that's where this, for example, would be tropical depression Cristobal. So we have this large overhanging high pressure system on either side. So you have a little bit of an angle that this can move through, just through into Louisiana, but still, even there, it's getting slightly suppressed further to the south, and then you see this high pressure just builds overhead. So it's going to stall the system out, and then it's going to allow the system to move through Louisiana and into Mississippi. And the GFS it has more of the more of a western track. A lot of these models bring it more towards Louisiana instead of Texas there. And then the GFS wants to do something a bit creative here, I guess you could say, within the next 10 days or so, and it wants to kind of reform this system and bring it back onto the ocean. We'll have to see about that, but I don't think that's too likely of a scenario, at least right now. Now, here's your chances of tropical depression wind speeds 20 knots or greater, and you see we have about a 90 to 95% chance of that, so pretty much certain here. And you see, even as we get landfall, that's about a 100% chance in that darkest red there, so that is very, very interesting to see. And then your chances of tropical storm force development, again, almost 100%, even as it's making landfall, and this by this point, it would be making landfall with Louisiana by this point. So that is definitely something very, very interesting to see. Now, finally, I'm going to show you guys my personal cone of uncertainty, and this is going to be a system tracking between the 4th and the 9th. Basically, the 9th would be when it's moving into about Arkansas and into Missouri. So that would be when it's well far inland, and it's probably strengthened to a weak tropical depression by that point, or a post-tropical storm there. Now, I think this is going to track into probably Louisiana, or even the chance of maybe even Alabama or Florida. And this cone will get tighter and tighter as the days go on. I'm expecting to update this with time. So within the next couple of days, whenever I do my next update, I'll definitely update this cone of uncertainty. I don't think too much is going to change with it between now and tomorrow, which is when I'm probably going to make my next video, or even the day after. So it's probably going to stay relatively the same, but if anything, if I'm gonna change anything with this map, it's probably that I'll focus more in on Louisiana and western Mississippi. I just didn't want to leave out that possibility that it makes a sudden change to the right, and it moves to Alabama or Florida. But for the most part, looking pretty certain that's gonna move into Louisiana by this point. Anyways, guys, that is gonna wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.